Okay, welcome to part 2 of the power steering pump rebuild on a 2001 Lexus ES300. We are going to be reassembling this power steering pump, and we've cleaned all the parts off after the disassemble of it. All the parts are nice and clean now. Got me a cup of some new transmission fluid, which is actually the same thing they use in these import models for the power steering. So we got this. We're going to be dipping some of these parts back in to lubricate them up really good, and let's go put this back together. So the first step we're going to do is test this flow control valve. Now in order to do so, what you'll do is you'll dip it in some power steering fluid, and then on here you'll take this and spin it up. I've got it bolted down now because we're going to be putting in the oil seal in next. But you stand this up, lubricate it really good, and then you just kind of drop it in there, and you want to stand it up nice and tall and straight, and if it sinks to the bottom with its own weight without you pushing on it or tapping on it or anything like that, then you know you've got a good flow control valve. Now you may have to lubricate it up especially after cleaning it. You really want to make sure it's lubed up really well, and it should sink right on nice and down to the bottom. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to order another flow control valve. And to make sure you get the right one, there should be a letter inscribed on the valve itself or on the casing. And you see that right there is a D, and that's the letter of the control valve that you would have to purchase if you indeed had to purchase a new one. This one's pretty good. We tested it just a second ago. Sorry I didn't film that part. And so now we're going to move on to the next thing, which is installing this oil seal into this oil seal spot. So lubricate it with some transmission fluid, power steering fluid, same thing in this year. We'll lubricate that up. We're gonna lubricate this up, tap it with a rubber mallet, and we'll be right back. Now that we've got the oil seal tapped in place, I took some masking tape because you got these pins that are underneath here that you want to really protect. You don't want them to pop out, and you don't want them to be bent in any way, shape, or form. So this kind of helps get it off, lift it up off the table, and because we're going to be reinstalling the shaft. Now, if you see here, there's some grooves right there. That's where a clip's going to be going into. So this will actually drop in, or I may actually bring it in from the bottom, and if that's the case, this is the part that's the threaded end here is going to be sticking out of the oil seal, because that's where the pulley is going to be attached to in the very end of this. So we're going to lubricate it, and we're going to put it in place. Now we got the shaft in place. The next thing we'll do is dunk and soak this what do we call this thing? Little vane housing, I guess. This little display here. Mine had a little notch on the top, and the arrow that kind of let me know that that was the top of this and not the bottom. I don't really know if there's a certain difference between the two. All I know is that's the way it came off, and that's the way I'm putting it back on. So my rebuild kit here, or gasket kit, came with a new C-clip. So I'm gonna put that C-clip right back on that main shaft, right there, and those little grooves you can see right there. That's going to keep this locked on. All right. Moving right along here. The next thing we did is I had to take 2 masking tape rolls because the shaft is a little longer than I anticipated. No big deal. So went ahead and put the gasket on. Make sure to don't flip it around the other way, because if you do, which I'll show you here. Flip around this way thinking that it's going to line up right, you're going to cover this hole, and that's not going to work. You're going to have leaks and all kinds of stupid shit. So put that on this way, nice and lubricated. It's got a rubber gasket or ring or whatever. It's kind of attached to it, so you don't have to worry about it being flimsy and flapping around and stuff like that. So the other thing is we put this guy on, slides right on these pins that we talked about earlier. Again, mine had these 2 little dots on top that kind of gave me a reference point to say, hey, this is the top, there's a bottom, does not have those. So And then going back on my previous videos and pictures that I took, that way I lined it all up as close to back to the original as when I took it off. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to lubricate these up really well and put these in the slots that they're supposed to go in. Now, I don't believe that they are specific in this slot goes here, this slot goes there. But what you do want to pay attention to, if I can get this in focus, is one of these edges is flat and the other one is rounded. So the one to the right there looks like it's rounded. I get a better view here. And the other one is flat, squared off in the end. Squared off side goes to the inside here. So your rounded edges are the ones that are going to be scraping around this outside of this plate or this ring that we just put on, which is why I believe they're beveled so that they can slide better and maneuver better inside there. So that is extremely important. If not, you'll probably break them, you'll score it up inside there, and your pump's going to be pretty much worthless at that point, from what I'm being told and what it looks like here, just from good old mechanics and physics. So anyway, we're going to lubricate these, slide them in one by one, and I'll be right back. Now that we've got this cam ring installed, with all the vanes in their proper places, see? If you look real close, the outside edges are rounded, the inside edges of those vanes are squared off. That's extremely important, can't stress that enough. Anyway, moving forward, we're now going to be lubricating this up really well and putting that back in along with the wave washer, which is here. Lubricate those up. It's kind of hard to do and hold this camera without getting stuff all over it, so is why I keep breaking off and coming back and not just having it in one continuous video. So I hope you don't mind that, but that's the way it's going to be. Be right back. As once we get the side plate on, it doesn't appear to have any difference whether you put the pins one way or another, or slide it onto the pins one way or another, I should say. It both kind of lines up the same. I even went back and looked at the previous videos that I took in pictures, and it all seems to line up pretty good. The wave washer really only goes one way. You have to make sure that these little tabs it has fit in these little grooves, and that, you know, the actual waves are sticking up. And from there, put an O-ring on this side plate, which is kind of easier to do than putting it into the backing plate, which I put in the new O-ring inside there. I'm gonna lube this up really good before we install it on there. Also put the new O-ring on this port here, you can see there, and a new O-ring on the union bolt, which you can see there, close to the top there. All right, so now I'm gonna lubricate this back plate and install it next. So there's the 4 bolts. The long ones obviously go into the long shaft area here. Short ones go into these areas here. So not really hard to screw that up. All right, I will be right back. Okay, so now I haven't got these on completely tight. I just kind of wanted to pop in and show you guys that I took a long lag bolt and screwed this down through this. You got 2 holes here that these mounting plates go on to in the very end here. But you can take a bolt, drill it through your table, your work table, you know, obviously if it's wood, and use the pump housing itself. Kind of butts up here, doesn't affect my shaft at all, and it keeps this nice and tight. That way I can torque these bolts down. And from what I'm reading through different manuals and tech specs, is these 4 bolts here, 12 millimeter, and they should be torqued at about 17 foot-pounds of torque. So we're going to do that now and make sure this thing is nice and tight, and then we'll continue on. Here's the lag bolt I was talking about that I slid through the housing, drilled into this hole here. I kept everything nice and tight, was able to torque those bolts down with no issues. So now we're going to install the spring, the flow control valve, and this union port screw, bolt, what have you. I think they call it a pressure point union, if that's correct. So that's what we're gonna do now, is gonna dip this in our fluid, slide it in there like so, and bolt this down. Now I think this big sucker here takes about 62 pounds of torque. So I'm gonna have to be a little ingenuitive, because I'm afraid to put it in a vise because I don't want it to slip out and score this thing all up. So we might be bolting this down to the table and going from there, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so as I mentioned, I don't have a vise, a table vise that is, to try to put this thing on, and there's not really a flat surface or an area to really squeeze this thing. So the best idea that I had was to run the bolts through the housing, not all the way, and in hindsight I probably should have put some washers on there, and you'll probably comment about that a little bit. But anyway, I would not recommend putting one in here because it's threaded and you don't want to screw those threads up or anything like that. But bolt it down, snug it up against the 2x4 out here in your garage, or you know, somewhere where you can stabilize something strong to push this force it against, because you know, put 62 pounds or a foot per pounds of pressure on this bolt right here, and actually worked out really well. Use a 24mm socket. Here's a torque wrench. Line this thing up, man, and it worked out a lot better than I anticipated. So maybe that's a helpful tip for you if you're going through this rebuild process. Is you know, screw it to the table, put it up against some nice support, something solid. It's not going to slip on you or anything like that, and you'll be able to torque that thing down to the right spec. Well, the last two things to do to finish this is to put this on. This guy here, it's just one bolt, pop it in, and then the pulley goes on, like so. Tighten this nut up, and you got your mounting plates. I would recommend putting your mounting plates on beforehand. I do not have them on hand at the moment because I have a pump that's leaking connected to the vehicle at the moment that I purchased, and then we'll be removing and taking back. So I may have a video on how to remove and install the pump. There's a couple of them out there on YouTube already, but I may add an additional one, maybe some other tips and tricks that I found useful, because this is about the second one I've done, because the other two that I've gotten were remanufactured pumps and they both have leaked on me. So anyway, that should do it for the part 2 reassembly of an OEM pump with a rebuild kit. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a good day.